Hey, on.
Hi, Mary. All right, we've got people coming in.
Hey, Jan. Hey, Mary.
Hey, Jeff.
So we are waiting for we're trying to get the main camera and the video here. So once that does, I'll probably go off camera or at least off sound so we don't have too many people trying to compete with each other. Let me see, Jan, am I able to share my screen? I am, good. All right. We do have a little PowerPoint here. So, hey, Jeff. Thanks for coming.
So, Jeff, you can tell that you can share?
I can tell that I can share. Yeah, I just tried it. So I'm
Okay.
good. Thank you. And like I said, we're still just worst case scenario, we could use my computer, but we got the other one going.
Yeah.
Used to being on the Zoom side of things. I'm not used to like how to interact with real people and real
There you go.
Recording in progress.
Okay, hold on.
What's the story, Jeff?
Can you hear us now?
No,
Yes, I can hear that.
I'm gonna turn the sound up here. Okay.
Okay, I'm not getting video from you yet. It shows video off.
Okay. It's ready.
There you go. There we go. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, everybody, let's get started. This is, it actually amounts to a joint public hearing of the Select Board, the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission Affordable Housing Subcommittee. Technically, it is a hearing that's required to be held by the Select Board. The Select Board has asked the Planning Commission to take on the administration of this hearing, so that's what we're doing. So it's a warned meeting of those bodies. So I will open that up. The first thing is just to approve the agenda, which is the single topic of this public hearing. Can I get a Planning Commission member to move the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, thank you. Do we have four? I'm not sure we have a quorum.
Let me check with, I think Vince can probably, let me check and see if Vince is available.
He doesn't, we don't, we talked about this before at our last meeting, that we acted in our last meeting so that we wouldn't have to have a quorum tonight to do what we need to do. But if somebody else calls in, that's fine, but we don't need it to have the public hearing. Okay, so let's move forward. This is a public hearing on the proposed Vermont Community Development Program planning grant. What I would like to do is hand this over to Jeff Lubell and Brian to give us some background. So we're all looking at a common starting point, and then we can take public comments as they come in. So Jeff, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Sorry about the mask. Just trying to protect my daughter here and from Habitat, right? Thank you for coming. And I think I recognize everybody else. Thank you all for being here. It's been a lot of work to get to this spot, and it's exciting to be here and moving forward with this proposal. What I wanted to do is give you a little bit of background about the affordable housing challenges in Norwich and the strategy that we've adopted and how this application fits within that strategy. And then turn it over to Brian, who will tell you a little bit more about the specific planning grant that we're proposing here. So I'm going to share my screen and call up the this slideshow here. Great. Now it says a new way to discover tips. Can someone make that go away? You need to just do the X or something. Great. So just a reminder, this is a requirement for the application for a Vermont Community Development Program planning grant. It's a formal hearing that has been warned by the Select Board. We have 2 members of the Select Board present. And it's being held by the Planning Commission in partnership with their Affordable Housing Subcommittee. And we're going to get going. So our goal here is to discuss a proposed application for a Vermont Community Development Planning Grant to discuss the feasibility of developing affordable / workforce housing on town-owned land on New Boston Road. So we're going to do these 4 things, talk about the need, talk about a little bit about how this fits into our larger strategy, then talk about the grant activities and how we're going to address potential issues during the process. So you're probably familiar with that graph on the right. You could guess what it is if you can't see it, if you're too far. Those are Norwich housing prices. Those are home prices over the last 10 years. You can see how they've almost doubled in the last 10 years. And so obviously housing is very expensive in Norwich. There are few housing options available for seniors who want to age in their community, for children of town residents who want to move back to town, for workers at the school or at King Arthur Flower, for middle-income families with school-age children. Really, they don't have the possibility of being able to afford a home here in Norwich. And There are a lot of results of this. One result is that we have less diversity in our community than we used to. Certainly income diversity has declined substantially over the years. Another result is that people who would like to live in Norwich but can't end up moving much further away, places like Claremont, and they end up driving longer distances and using a lot more gasoline, which has environmental impacts. And then we've all, I think, been paying attention to the school tax issue, right? And so another result is that our taxes are going up faster than otherwise, because in Vermont, they have this unusual policy where the amount of your taxes is really determined by the amount of your equalized per pupil spending. And when you have fewer pupils and particularly fewer equalized pupils, you're going to have a higher per pupil spending, and therefore your tax rate's going to be higher. And in that calculation, every kid counts, but low income kids count more than others because they cost more to educate them. So that's some really important points just about the need. Now we have, in Norwich, we've adopted a multi-pronged strategy for addressing this. Just a reminder, this was adopted in 2019 based on a series of public meetings, public sessions, and it was incorporated into the 2020 Norwich Town Plan. So this is actually an official 5-year strategy. It runs from January 2020 through December 31, 2024. I'm just going to walk through a little bit just before the elements of this. I'm not going to go into great detail, but just so you have a sense kind of how this fits in. So there are several objectives to the strategy. One is affordability. We want to ensure that people of all incomes can afford housing, quality housing in Norwich. The second is the goal of diversity of the housing stock. So ensuring that it includes a range of different housing types for people of different incomes and backgrounds. So that includes older adults or families with children, the town's workforce. And we want to advance environmental sustainability, right? So we want, where possible, to reduce energy use and greenhouse gases by increasing housing in areas served by public transit and with easy access to employment and retail centers, as well as through the use of green building materials and practices. So those are the goals. We have these 4 strategies. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but just high level. The first strategy is to increase the development of dedicated affordable housing. So dedicated affordable housing means housing that it rents or sells to people at a specified income level, whatever income level you decide, that's for. But it's legally restricted, right? So this particular one is focused on, some people say subsidized housing. We call it dedicated affordable housing because it doesn't always have subsidy. So just some of the things we're doing, we have formalized an affordable housing revolving fund, and we're hoping to grow it. Norwich has a density bonus that we hope to review. We are investigating the use of land owned or controlled by the town of Norwich for dedicated affordable housing. That's what we're talking about today. We want to encourage the donation of land. We want to also conduct outreach to developers to encourage them to develop housing in Norwich. So that's part of the first strategy. The second strategy talks about facilitating the development of lower cost housing types. So these are not things that are necessarily legally restricted to people of particular income. So accessory dwelling units, for example, or duplexes or triplexes or garden style apartments, what we call the missing middle housing. Missing middle is the missing between single family and kind of mid-rise multifamily. There's a lot of historic housing types that historically were part of all of our communities that have disappeared, partly because of our zoning rules make it very difficult to build that kind of housing. A lot of cities around the country, a lot of towns and rural areas are trying to restore that missing middle and make it easier again to build lower cost housing types. We also want to make sure that you can develop multifamily housing in Norwich. That's actually state law, that you have to have a zoning code that accommodates multifamily housing. Third thing we want to do is reduce barriers to new developments. We want to make it less expensive to build housing here. We also want to think about, are there ways to address the barriers to development that are related to limitations on septic capacity? So that's the third strategy. The fourth one is really about understanding, trying to expand public understanding of housing issues, making it easier for people to understand our zoning rules, developing educational materials about frequently asked questions about affordable housing and We want to help people understand how development will affect town and school property taxes, which is, has become a much more salient issue. But it's really always been an issue, but it's become more acute. So anyway, those are basically the 4 strategies of the town. This is a little bit, just quickly, what we've done to date. So one is we've adopted a policy for the $45,000 revolving fund. So this was a fund that was reapproved by voters. Jackie just looked it up. Was it 2018, right? And there's a set of rules for how, if someone wanted to apply for that fund, how they would do it. We've completed a review of publicly owned land that Brian's going to talk about. We are now exploring the feasibility of developing on some of that land. That's the whole purpose of this planning grant. We have completed a study of the development patterns, trying to understand where are people building in Norwich. The Planning Commission is looking into updating Norwich's zoning code, which at this point is out of date. And then there was a study of wastewater needs and options that was initiated by the Planning Commission, but subsequently was canceled. So that's another thing that has kind of started, then stopped. But in any event, a lot of work has happened. And we have been working on this particular effort for several years, just to get to the point where we're able to submit a planning grant. So I know it feels like it's taking forever, but you have to, I work on this issue around the country. You have to have a long time horizon. You have to understand that these things take time, and that one person starts and eventually you get to the finish line. So, Brian, you want to tell us about the review of publicly owned land?
Sure. Just Sure. Thanks, Jeff. So Jeff started with a graph that talked about, or that illustrated the housing prices in Norwich over the last decade. He could have just as easily shown one that showed housing costs, the cost of building housing, not just in Norwich, but really regionally. It's just grown to an astronomical level, to the point where even if you're not building affordable housing with rental subsidies, similar to what Jeff's mentioning, if you're selling to or renting to folks who are at lower or moderate incomes for their areas, I'm not aware of developers in the area who are doing it without some kind of subsidy, whether it's in pre-development, the kind of environmental review stuff, or in the development of the project, or then to help folks get in their homes. The costs are beyond what developers could then recoup by serving low and moderate income families. And so one way to bring down those costs is by lowering or eliminating the price of the land acquisition. And so that's kind of the genesis of this study that the then town planner, Rod Francis, did with us now a few years ago, where we looked at all of the parcels of town-owned land, or parcels where the town controlled the development rights, to see if any of them might be suitable for further study for future housing. With the idea that if, years down the road, if those studies were promising, that the town may be in a position to either donate or convey that land below a market rate to a developer who could then offer housing that would be affordable. So we went through many rounds of that study, looked at a lot of parts of town that may surprise you. There are a lot of cemeteries, a lot of parks with deed restrictions, a lot of things that were not very promising. But we did find some that we wanted to pursue. And so, Jeff, if you want to go to the next one. So the big one that we're talking about here, and sorry if it's a really zoomed out map, but many of those shaded areas are town-owned parcels, or parcels that may be owned by the fire district, for example, but where the town has a right to control the development process. So really the one that was most promising following the review and given what was going on in town at the time was the one we're talking about tonight, which is the quite large parcel that includes at the southern end the transfer station off New Boston Road. And so that's one really kind of at the very center of the map. It happens to be, just a mile outside of the center of town, not too far away from advanced transit at Huntley Meadow, and really close to the highway and to the whole regional job center of Hartford, Lebanon, and Hanover. So we can talk about, if you want to go to the next slide. So one way that projects that hope to provide affordable housing can lower their costs is not just by getting land donated or acquired cheaply, but it's by getting some of the pre-development costs supported by public subsidy. So that's really what this is. The VCDP program, it's a state program, but with federal funds. And it really, if Norwich is to be successful, it's a competitive grant application. But if we're successful, gives us access to money to go out and find qualified technical experts that will tell us more about the site and will tell us if we're kind of, in a position to need further evaluation, and then if we're on the right course for housing at the site down the road. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this is the parcel kind of from above. And many of you will recognize, for those in the room, this southern half is where the transfer station was. And years ago was a town dump as well. It's this northern half that goes kind of up the hill and into the woods that we're really talking about. Based on that initial review that we did with land records and with consulting folks who have lived in town for quite some time, we thought that there's little likelihood that there had been a dump in that northern site, but it's got steep slopes. It's above the stream that goes along New Boston Road. And there's other aspects that make it not perfect. Certainly, if there were a perfect town-owned parcel, we wouldn't need a planning grant and further study. But that it was a pretty good bet to warrant further examination. And so we chose it as kind of our first lowest hanging fruit for further study. Go to the next. Okay, so these X's and the circle are just a disclaimer, rough approximations, but there's a communications tower there now above the town garage, and there are limits on where you can build, like a certain radius from the tower, right? You don't want it falling on housing. So outside of that radius, we've kind of mapped out some rough ideas of where the flat spots are in the parcel as potential future sites for housing. And again, all this could come out in further study. But there are a whole lot of questions that we need answered before the town even, gets started really on the process of imagining some kind of donation or conveyance to a developer. So among them is, first and foremost, how would you get into the site? Right now, if you're turning off New Boston Road into the transfer station, like you see straight ahead of you, the town garage, and if you bear a hard right, you come into the transfer station, right? But on your left is right now a trail that goes up into the woods. So like, what would access look like at that point of the parcel? Are there other access points that might need to be considered? And how could you imagine a drive up to one of these relatively flat points? The other things that we would want to consider are things related to kind of the environment, you could say. So are there wetlands issues? Are there things that impact this septic possibility or well? And then like where and how many homes could you build there? Whether it looks like the condos that are off Beaver Meadow or duplexes. You can imagine a variety of different models that may fit the site, but that's kind of that would be kind of the next step. And then if you imagine one of those models to be successful, what would that really look like from a developer standpoint? Is it feasible? Is there the kind of financing out there and the kind of subsidy programs to make it so that they could then turn around and rent it or sell it below market for folks who are low or moderate income. And then, again, before this proceeds much further, there may need to be further environmental review. And that would, it could potentially come under a separate program that would reduce the town's liability if it turns out there were things that were found at the site that had been caused years ago by dumping at the site. But all this is down the line and would be examined in the initial study. I think you can think of three, if you go to the next slide, Jeff. I think you can think of the work of the planning grant in three phases. One is really investigation. That would include the kind of wetlands, septic, water, things I talked about. It also will look at historical records around what buildings might have been at the site. Even it's called an archaeology study. There may be Native American sites that we just don't know about. That would be part of the investigation. And then there would be a market study as well that would look at different models of development and whether they're affordable and feasible there. The second big piece after investigation, you could call it consultation. That's where we would involve, if things looked like they were promising at the site, we would speak with town residents who may be interested, like yourselves, in development at the site, but also potential future residents, if it's senior housing or other things that might accommodate folks who feel like they want to move within town, but don't have any options. They feel stuck. We heard this a lot when we did the town plan. And then we would also consult with low and moderate income communities outside of Norwich who may also be beneficiaries of future housing at the site. Jeff mentioned folks traveling from as far as Claremont or Springfield to job centers around here. Certainly, we would want to involve voices from outside of Norwich who might benefit from being here, where we have such great amenities. The third big phase after investigation and consultation, we call planning. This is where we really help the town and future development partners think about the mechanics of what could come next. So is there further environmental study necessary? What would it look like to subdivide now one contiguous parcel? What are the processes that the town council or the select board would need to go through as they kind of walk down that path to partnering with a developer for the site? So that's kind of the key work. And it would take, as we sketched out here, about a year after the grant is approved, in theory, if we're successful. Jeff, did you want to add anything else? This is the kind of the core work of the program.
Yeah, just a few things. One is there are different models for how you treat the land in an affordable housing deal, right? So one model is the town would donate the land to a developer like Habitat or others, right? But another model is that the town can retain ownership of the land and do a long-term lease. So I just want to be clear that we don't know at this point what that model will be or whether there even needs to be a conveyance, right? And so just keep in mind that's an open question. The other is in terms of the income levels. A lot of times people say, well, affordable housing, you're going to be serving these people who are destitute, and and I think it's very unlikely that the state is going to put the kind of money that it would need into this project to serve people with no income. This is much more likely to be a program that's serving people kind of in the $50,000 to $70,000, $80,000 a year range. So it's important because these people are going to have a car and have access to a car. They're kind of the folks who are working at King Arthur and are working at the school. And just so you get an image, I mean, just, there are programs that serve lower income populations. They generally require you to be on public transit. They generally require larger numbers of units than we can accommodate. So just so you get a sense, sort of what people think of as workforce housing, although it could be seniors. I mean, you could decide, but that's kind of the income level that we're talking about. And the other thing I would just say is, it's a real priority to me to not build on a dangerous place. So I definitely think before we would move forward, we would have to do some kind of environmental assessment to make sure it's safe. But I've inquired, and you can't get money to do the environmental assessment until you've done this step and understand the feasibility, because it doesn't make sense to invest in the environmental assessment if it's not a feasible project. And the other thing that's important to me is to make sure that it doesn't feel like you're driving past the transfer station or you're driving past the garage. If at all possible, we want it to just feel like you're turning into a neighborhood. So I'm imagining that you would kind of reimagine that intersection where the transfer station is. You could put some trees up to screen the DPW, so you don't have to see that necessarily. You would turn up into Green Acres Development or whatever you want to call it, Cedar Hill. I mean, it would just be this lovely little neighborhood you would turn into, and there would be you wouldn't even know that the transfer station's there. So I think we have to just try to think a little bit creatively about how to do this in a way that makes it feel like a real community. And hopefully there'll be some community amenities, that there would be trails and, there would be a playground, and, you would be creating a community there. And I think the final thing is, in terms of how many units we're talking, nobody knows for sure at this point. That's why we do the study. But there's a big threshold for going above 9 units, which is that you invoke Act 250 and it becomes much more expensive. So it's also, you might need a zoning change really to do a whole lot more than that. So I think realistically, you're probably looking at up to 9 units. Can't guarantee it, but that would be my guess, just given the challenges associated with building more than that. Unless the state decides to raise the Act 250 threshold, which it's considering.
Okay.
Did you have anything else? You want questions?
Well, I think
Brian,
that's, we can open it up if you and Brian are.
I just want to quickly add one thing, Jan. So
Sure.
the hope is, if your feedback is positive and the select boards is as well, that we would submit this for review in the next cycle of the grant program. So tonight's your night to give your comments and suggestions, but that doesn't mean tonight's your last opportunity to have a voice on this issue, the need and what future development at the site might look like if the further investigation is promising. So I would encourage all of you to come to all of our meetings, to reach out individually, to get informed on the issues, because ideally, there are going to be future opportunities for public conversation on this. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeff and Brian. That's very, very helpful, very good background information. I would ask, this is a public hearing. We have 18 or 19 people on Zoom, and then the people in the room there. And we want to get all the comments in. Vince Crow, who's usually our minute taker, is on here, but I know he's feeling under the weather. So I would ask Brian and Jeff, can you be responsible for taking notes on the comments as they come in? We'll have the recording, but just so somebody is signed up to get those down.
Yes. Yes.
Brian has agreed to take notes.
Okay. So with
And
that,
I would say that we, just so you know, we have a quorum here on the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, just acknowledging that.
okay, and we do, with Vince signing on, we have a quorum of the Planning Commission as well.
Okay, great.
So at this point, because it's a public hearing, I'm not going to give priority to select board or planning commission members. I'm going to open it up to the public. Obviously, anyone counts as the public, so anyone can chime in. Given the number of people, certainly try and be as brief as possible. And if you're adding weight to the person who just spoke, then say it that way, and we can get to everybody. So with that, I will open it up. And Paul, you're first on the list.
Can I just ask a point of order, which is
Sure, Jeff.
how would we, people who are in the room and want to talk, should they come forward so you can see them? Would that make sense?
I can see the whole room. So if
Okay, good.
we can go
Very
back and forth, but I can see it. Paul?
Yeah, hi. My name is Paul Manganello. I'm actually on the subcommittee with Jeff and Brian, and I want to commend them for the work that they've done so far. And I just want to say, Jeff had mentioned about the geography of having a development there and it being a neighborhood, our property actually abuts the transfer station to the south. So the transfer station is our neighbor, and we've been there since the 80s. And I can't think of a better neighbor. So anyway, I think it's a good place to live, and I welcome hopefully more neighbors to the north. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, someone in the room in the back there with your hand up, if you want to come to the front.
Yes.
Give your,
Up to any of the
Give your
mics,
name.
yeah.
or maybe, yeah, you put a
This
chair.
one?
This is Steve. I take it.
Okay, I'm gonna sit here.
That's perfect.
Thank you so much. My name's Rachel Coombs. I live in town. I have 3 kids currently in the school system. And I have 3 brief things I'd like to say. One, I am fully in support of us investigating this site. It's extremely important that we take action. When you talk to a lot of people about the problems with property taxes and the school taxes, people say things like, the state's going to fix it. The state's going to do something. Oh, don't worry, they're going to do something. It's such a big problem. Well, guess what the state is going to do? Just a few days ago, I heard Governor Scott saying all options, including draconian cuts to our schools, are on the table. If we don't take positive action, negative action will be taken on our behalf that we have no control over, that will be negatively impacting the ability for families to live in this town. So that's the first thing. I have, briefly, if you'll call to mind the 3rd Harry Potter book, when he thinks that someone's going to come and do the Patronus for him to save the day. Turns out it's Harry himself who ends up having to do the Patronus. So anyone who's a Harry Potter fan, we have to do our Patronus for our town now. We can't wait for other people to come fix our problems. That's number 1. 2, the Star Lake community is a beating heart of Norwich. It may be physically a little bit out of town, but in terms of the amazing contributions on all levels, business, the arts, this, amazing children, the teachers in our school, that community is nothing but positive for us. So, we're adding to the beauty, the complexity of the richness of our community in every way by pursuing affordable housing. 3, one of my daughter's beloved classmates this year had to leave the school this year because her family couldn't find affordable housing. She was an incredibly dynamic, wonderful child, beloved, like super, had made friends with everyone. And it was really disruptive to their school, their classes, community. And the only reason she had to leave is because her family couldn't afford to stay here. So this is a big issue. This is a statewide issue. This is a national issue. But this is also an extremely personal issue that affects individuals, and it's already affecting individuals and causing, the lack of housing is already causing harm. So let's take positive action instead of pretending that the problems are too big for us to do anything about, and waiting for someone to come save the day, when really that will probably just mean things that we really don't like and are worse for our community. So thank you so much for the dedicated years of work you've put into this difficult problem. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, another person in the room coming from the back. Thank you.
I can be as eloquent, but Susan Barrett, a resident of Norwich and also on New Boston Road. So I also want to echo the previous commenter. Thank you for the amazing work that this committee has done in moving us forward with this particular project. And I also would encourage everyone in the town of Norwich to be open to more diverse and affordable housing. We are seeing our taxes go through the roof, and it is directly related to the quite frankly, the lack of diversity, income and otherwise in this town. So the time is now. This is, I know you all have been working on it for years. I would like to see the elected officials, more elected officials in Norwich move much quicker on these issues. And I wholeheartedly support the advancement of this planning grant, the application, and support continued efforts to make more workforce affordable, diverse housing in our town. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments? Kate and Tim, I'm not sure. Who is it that wants to speak?
Yeah, hi, this is Kate White. I live in town with
Okay.
my husband, Tim, who's sitting next to me. We definitely support affordable housing. We think this is a very good approach that you've taken to do all the preliminary legwork to identify some sites in town. The tax issue was something we could foresee and that we should have taken action on earlier to make sure that we did make Norwich a place where affordable housing could be provided for people of different incomes that would impact our school taxes positively. We think it's a great site. We live nearby as the crow flies. And we hope that just like the last speaker, that the town moves quickly on this, approves the grant and gets this grant program going.
Very good. Thank you. John? Muted. You're muted, John.
We can't hear you. I know you're not on
Still
mute,
not.
but is it possible you are? We can't hear you.
All right, well, we can come back to John. See if we can find out the microphones, something's not working. Arlene?
You're on mute too.
Arlene, you're on mute.
I came and I have a historical perspective. I'm one of the elder statesmen in town. Back in the 1960s, when I lived in Massachusetts, I was involved and wrote a booklet called What About Housing? And housing and diverse housing is something that has haunted probably all of New England. Other states are in better shape than we are in terms of being able to do things. I so wholeheartedly support our going ahead with this. And from my perspective, aside from all the other good things that everybody has said, I'm very conscious that our neighboring communities are moving ahead with diverse housing. We haven't done anything. We have a lot of trouble getting people to come work here. Why? Because they can't afford to live here. And the notion of having to drive to get to work for an hour and a half or so has so many really harmful implications. So I guess it really comes down to now is the time, we're behind the times. People have worked very hard to get us to this stage. And I hope that the Planning Commission and the Select Board will move forward as quickly as they can to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. John, you want to give it a try? Nope.
I
You
had.
might look at what microphone you have selected.
Maybe log back in. I missed the recording notes.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
Yeah,
Just making a suggestion for John.
Oh, okay.
I
Any,
had problems getting on initially also, and it's about the recording at the bottom right-hand.
oh, okay. John, the comment is that there may be a message in the bottom of your screen to approve or say got it to a recording. And you need to click that before it will let you get to the next stage. Just a thought. Are there other people who'd like to speak? Jackie?
I'd like to speak. Thank you. Thanks, John. Yeah. Jackie Allen, I live in Norwich, and I want to, as others have already, commend this group for your very hard work. I know you've been at this for years. This is actually a very small step in the scheme of things, but it's a very important step, and it deserves all of our support to investigate whether or not this land is feasible for a project. So I wholeheartedly support it, and I hope others do too. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Other people who'd like to speak?
Got one.
Elliot?
Is that me?
Oh, sorry. And in just a second.
Hey, I'm not adding anything that hasn't already been said, but I think an avalanche of support in these things can be helpful. So I just want to say thank you. This is outstanding. Let's move forward. I think there's overwhelming support across the town. I'd love to see a really strong push in this direction. And I hope members of the select board who are there are heeding this message and will run with it in as much as they can do.
Thank you, Elliot. All right, there was someone in the room there was just getting up. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, Linda Gray, and I echo what everybody else has said, and I just want to add this concept of that of monoculture, and actually that in very many different arenas we don't want a monoculture because it's not helpful, and so I apply that to a variety of things, and I think it applies to housing. So I think diversity of housing in any community helps make it a thriving community and a diversity of people who live there. So I want to just emphasize that. Separately, I do want to ask a couple of technical questions, and probably Brian or Jeff will know the answers. So Brian, you hinted that you might have to wait for the next round to put the application in. Can you just describe what the timing is on that?
Oh, sorry. The next round, I didn't mean to imply that we're skipping around. There's a deadline that's coming up in early April.
Okay, fine. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. And then my other question is, it's mostly curiosity that I just wonder, so this is a grant to a particular state agency. Is it staff from the agency that carries out the study, or do they hire a consultant? I'm just curious as to how it works.
Yeah, good question. So it's not staff from the agency. It's up to the towns to decide how they'll administer the grant, and the town, after speaking with a handful of potential grant managers, has some ideas about this and plans to contract with one consultant in particular that would oversee the grant administration. Now, that's very different than doing that technical scientific work that would be identified through a series of bids. According to all the rules for procurement in the grant program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Jeff?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Smith. I'm a deacon at St. Barnabas Episcopal Church in Norwich. And I want to speak really not so much from a faith perspective, but also from the perspective of somebody who has grown up in a community in Connecticut that was an extraordinarily expensive place to live. And as a result, over time, with the lack of any sort of affordable housing in the community, long-term residents and newcomers to the town were unable to come into the town. As a result, today there are no commercial offerings within that town, no stores, no businesses other than perhaps online businesses. It is extraordinarily important to the economic vitality of a community to have a diverse population. And I just want to support what is being said here. And as a Christian, also want to support it as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Others? Jenny?
Thank you. My name is Jenny Anderson. I'm the priest at St. Barnabas Church in Norwich, and I've been here for 9 years, and wow, have there been changes over those 9 years? We're going through a lot, and tonight's work represents one of the better changes, in my opinion, that we've made so much progress in getting toward developing affordable housing in the town of Norwich. It's a challenge, and I just want to express my gratitude to Jeff and to the committee, and I hope to help in any way I can. And having St. Barnabas having 4 acres right on Main Street is a challenge for accountability toward these kinds of goals. And so I'm glad to also learn about how the housing project is progressing. And I'm grateful for this presentation and for this night to share the incredible work that's been done. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good, thank you. Jeff, do you want to, or John, do you want to give it another try?
I'm going to try to use my phone this time.
No, you got it. You got it.
Don't give up. No, anyway, I just really need to say that I affirm what other people have said. I think it's really important that we do this. I bought a house here. Our family bought a house here in 2015. That would be about 9 or 10 years ago. We moved into the community in 2015. And I think I attended a select board candidate forum before I even was in my house. And the first question I asked was, what is this community doing about affordable housing? And unanimously, of course, all of the candidates know that they want to do something about affordable housing. And that was 10 years ago. And I don't think there's a select board member that has ever run for the office that's ever said, we must do nothing about affordable housing, right? I think there's a real chance for our community to move forward to actually put some meat on the bones here. And they've done some careful work. It looks like very cautious presentation of what we might be able to accomplish. Much of the work has been done already. I wish I could pay $6,000 to the people who have already worked on this volunteer basis. It's worth far more than that, the work they've done so far. And I think that would be a real lost opportunity. I think that the generosity of this town towards places like the Haven is exemplary. I think there's just no way that all of that giving has accomplished a fundamental need in this community, which is more housing for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you for being persistent. Other people who would like to speak? Any questions from Planning Commission members or Select Board members? Okay. If there are no other comments, then I can close the public hearing for this. I think we've certainly gotten the message. I think the Select Board members can carry that back to their meeting, which will be a week from tomorrow, I believe. This will be the final application will be in the packet for the Select Board meeting next week. And then the Planning Commission, as I said, has already approved their support of this, and I will write a letter promoting that and stating that support from the Planning Commission. So if there are any questions or any other support that people would like to give, I would say that the next step here is to attend the Select Board meeting. I believe the message has been heard loud and clear. So I think it would just be a show of support to help that push it through. But I do think we have a very strong message, and thank you all for coming. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn from somebody on the Planning Commission.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Ernie. I'm not gonna ask Vince to wake back up, so I think we will adjourn. Paul, did you want to say something quick or no? All right. Thank you all for coming. I will adjourn this public hearing and hope to make progress on this quickly.
Thank you
Good
very
night,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.